I'm Rachel Meade, Injury Prevention Manager at Injury Matters. Alcohol use is a leading risk factor for injury in Australia, and as part of our Leading Change series, I'm joined today by Julia Stafford, Alcohol Program Manager at the Cancer Council WA. Welcome, Julia.
Great to be with you.
So, Julia, you've been working in the drug and alcohol space for some time now. Can you tell us a little bit about your role at the Cancer Council and how you ended up here?
Yeah, sure. So I work in the alcohol programs team at Cancer Council WA. We work to inform community discussion about alcohol issues, alcohol harms, and how we can reduce those harms. So we've been here for just under a year, and it's a really great environment where there's lots of people here working to improve public health and to really encourage the government to adopt effective alcohol policy measures and public health policy measures in general.
Yeah, okay.
I started my career working in research around the tactics of the tobacco industry. And so, since then I've worked for about 10 years around alcohol issues and alcohol policy, but there's a lot of parallels between the strategies that the tobacco and alcohol industries use in trying to get people to buy and use their products and keep using their products despite the huge amounts of harm that's being caused. So, lots of parallels there. I find that really fascinating area that it really helps drive me and the team here to keep working on these issues.
Yeah, okay. So in terms of the alcohol and the tobacco industry, advocating for policy change, it's difficult and often requires you to go head to head with other industries. Can you tell me a little bit about the skills that you've developed over the years to become an effective alcohol advocate or advocate to reduce alcohol related harm?
Yeah, I think there's lots of skills and learnings that effective advocates need. Something that I've learnt about is the importance of really knowing the evidence. So making sure that everything we do stays within the boundaries of the evidence. So it's really important to make sure that what you're advocating for is consistent with what the evidence base says. Mm-hmm. But it's also really important to remember that facts and stats themselves are not enough. Yeah. So, the evidence is often not enough to persuade people, and not everybody is persuaded by science and the evidence. So it's really important that we think about, what will help people come along with us on the journey. How can we get them enthusiastic and get the public on board and the policymakers on board with the changes that we need, because just really need to remember that what persuades me may be different to what persuades you and what persuades other people. So that's something that we really always need to be thinking about.
Yeah. In terms of, leadership in injury prevention and safety promotion, it can take many forms, through individual leadership through to organisational leadership. Do you have some examples of how different forms of leadership have contributed to reducing alcohol-related injury or alcohol-related harm in WA?
Yeah, as you say, leadership comes in lots of different forms. In the alcohol space, we've seen a lot of great leadership in terms of research. So researchers who do policy-relevant research, researchers who provide us with the evidence we need to help to communicate to the public and to policymakers why a particular policy change is needed or how a policy change will help reduce the impacts of alcohol and help public health. So those researchers who show that leadership in designing policy relevant research has been hugely important in this space. I've also seen really great leadership in non-government organisations, particularly those people who help build and support the next generation of public health advocates. Those who put the time into sharing their knowledge, supporting the younger generation, and helping them learn by doing. That's often, the only way really to learn is by having a go in a well-supported environment. And they often help build connections between people they've worked with, people who have the kind of can-do attitude, those who you want to be working with. So that kind of leadership in supporting the kind of up and coming emerging generation of advocates is really, really important. Yeah,
those relationships between the researchers and the NGOs are so vital, for us to have the best evidence, as you say, to support what we're doing, but also for us as NGOs to be informing the researchers around what the evidence is that we need to support our work, or to inform good interventions.
Yeah, you're right. It's those kind of two-way relationships are really important to make sure the researchers who are putting so much time and effort into their work are going to provide something that we can use in our advocacy. I guess another really important aspect of leadership I've seen is from within governments. So I think a really nice example in Western Australia is the government leadership in for funding the Alcohol Think Again program. WA is the only jurisdiction in Australia who has a sustained public education campaign that informs the public about the risks and harms from alcohol, but also informs them about how they can reduce their risk of harms. So for WA to be kind of the only jurisdiction in Australia who has committed to that over the long term is really important, and it shows in the surveys that look at knowledge about harms and how to reduce those harms. WA does better than other states and territories, so that leadership from within government is paying dividends.
Yeah, and that's something that we should be really proud of.
Absolutely.
Yeah. In terms of alcohol policy, in your opinion, what single change do you think would make the most, significant difference in reducing alcohol-related harm in WA?
Yeah, governments can have they can make a really big difference in how much harm we see from alcohol. We actually know a lot about what works to reduce harm from alcohol in terms of the policies that help reduce the impacts of alcohol on the community. So it's about governments adopting those policy measures that we know will make a difference. The evidence is there, so really it's just about getting that policy change. And there are a few key areas there. So it's about setting a minimum floor price for alcohol to stop the alcohol industry pushing cheap alcohol, that really dirt cheap alcohol, on people who are vulnerable. It's about holding the alcohol industry to a higher standard in terms of how they promote and sell their alcohol products. So, nobody expects the alcohol industry to voluntarily protect children. So we need governments to step in and set a higher standard for those industries to really stop them from pushing their alcohol on and their brands on young people and others in the community. And it's about, recognising that more alcohol means more harm. So we need to look to the community where there's already enough alcohol and where community members already feel that they've got enough alcohol in their community. We need to listen to them and make sure that the regulations and policies are really taking their view into account, so that we can stop having more and more alcohol in WA communities that just don't need it.
Are there some examples of jurisdictions that have implemented those policy changes, either nationally or internationally, that has the evidence showed that those things work?
Yeah, well, in 2018, the Northern Territory became the first area in Australia to set a minimum price on alcohol. They set it $1.30 per standard drink, and we've seen the first kinds of evaluation evidence coming out of the Northern Territory, which showed that floor price helped to reduce harms that were related to alcohol in a whole range of different areas. So it's not just one or two kind of health indicators, but it's a whole range of health and social indicators that are showing that just a simple measure of a modest floor price on alcohol really does help to protect the community, reduce the levels of harms, and help have a safer and healthier community.
Yeah, and that monitoring and evaluation to support the policy changes obviously really important as part of that.
Absolutely.
To demonstrate the effectiveness of it. What advice would you give to emerging leaders that are wanting to create change in health in Western Australia?
Yeah.
It's a big question.
Well, I mean, it takes time to create change. Important change does take time. I think it's important to be aware of that, to help set your expectations and understand that you need to stick with it. To help see that change and be part of it, you need to stick with it. But also find the shorter, small wins along the way to help keep that motivation and see those signs of progress along the way. Because those big policy changes, they take time to help the community come along, help the policymakers come along, and so you need to kind of look for those smaller wins along the way. I think it helps to be patient enough to stay with it over that course, but be impatient enough to really keep pushing, driving for that change. I think that patience and impatience and having the balance of the two is a really important skills and things for people to remember.
Yeah. That's great.
And finding the people who share your passion, who share your drive, who can, it's much more fun to be working in a team, to support each other during the frustrating times, to share your skills, often bring different things to the table. So, finding those people with the can-do attitude that you work with really effectively, I think is important, and that will help you stick with it into the longer term.
Yeah, I agree. Finding that team of common people, either in an organisation or a professional network,
absolutely
are important.
Yeah, they might not be your immediate colleagues. They may be people working on different areas and issues, but there are often parallels that you can find. You're often dealing with a lot of the same issues when you're talking about policy change. So finding those people, even in other states and other countries, that can be part of your network, that really help keep you interested and motivated even during the frustrating times.
Yeah. Well, that's it for today. Thank you so much for sharing your time and I guess your insights and learnings into reducing alcohol-related harm. We really appreciate it.
Thanks so much.